Can everyone's attention, please? The conference will be starting in a minute. I just want to remind everybody that we'll be filming this live on Facebook Live, and if you have any comments or questions, we're setting out the mics now, so please use the mics. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Warning Coordination Meteorologist Roger Erickson with the National Weather Service in Lake Charles with our Tropical Storm Harvey briefing for 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, August 30th. In our first slide we're looking at, Tropical Storm Harvey is slowly weakening as it moves across central Louisiana tonight, heading towards northeast Louisiana by Thursday morning. The major problem will continue to be the ongoing flooding in southeast Texas and east Texas, as well as the potential for flooding in parts of central Louisiana. The winds will be gusty tonight in Louisiana. This evening, we're expecting to see wind gusts in the 25 to 35 mile an hour range in central and south central Louisiana, and 20 to 30 miles an hour in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. After midnight, the winds will be gusting in the 20 to 25 mile an hour range in southwest, south central, and central Louisiana, and less than 20 miles an hour in southeast Texas. Now, due to these wind and saturated grounds from all the rainfall, expect to see some trees potentially falling down across the entire forecast area. The storm surge threat has decreased in southeast Texas and Cameron Parish, but there's a lot of standing floodwaters that will take days to drain. However, the storm surge threat is still there. It's a low threat, but still there for Vermilion, Iberia, and St. Mary parishes, where water can be 1 to 2 feet above ground level through high tide late tonight due to the wind still being onshore. We're forecasting an additional 1 to 3 inches of rain in parts of East Texas and central Louisiana for tonight. Amounts will be less than an inch of rain in southeast Texas and southwest and south central Louisiana. Record river flooding is occurring on Pine Island Bayou near Sour Lake and Bevel Oaks, Village Creek near Coon, and the Natchez River near Beaumont. Major flooding is forecast for the Sabine River at Bon Weir, Deweyville, and Orange, as well as Bayou Anacoco at Rosepine, Bundick Creek near Bundick Lake, and the Calcasieu River at Old Town Bay Saltwater Barrier in Sam Houston Jones State Park. The threat for isolated tornadoes is very low in central Louisiana for tonight. Our next slide we're looking at is the infrared satellite imagery. I've got you seeing where the strongest convection or area of showers and thunderstorms extends across East Texas, up into Northeast Texas and northwestern quadrant of Louisiana. Another band extends further to our east across portions of Mississippi, Alabama, towards the Florida Panhandle. What that looks like locally on our weather radar from the Fort Polk radar looks like this. We've got an area of rain that's over East Texas and northwest Louisiana, extending into western portions of southwest and central Louisiana. You can see from the Fort Polk radar that the heaviest rain bands are north of our forecast area between the Winfield and Natchitoches area, extending down towards Leesville. Let me back up for a minute and also mention the fact that these green polygons that you see on here are flash flood warnings. The ones in our Texas area are actually flash flood emergencies due to the ongoing flood problems in those particular areas. Here's the forecast track for Harvey over the next 24 hours or so, or 12 hours, I should say. The forecast track for Harvey is in northeastern Beauregard Parish right now. Forecast to move across Vernon and parts of Rapides Parish this evening before ending up north of Alexandria by midnight tonight. Now, by tomorrow morning, we expect it to be up in the Monroe area. However, the main impact for our region, the widespread flooding across southeast Texas extending into East Texas. The next slide shows how much rainfall we've seen in the past 5 days across our forecast areas. So in blue, across parts of Hardin, Jefferson, and Orange counties, that's over 40 inches of rain that's been observed in those areas. The shade of pink that extends through much of the rest of the remainder of Hardin into southern Jasper, southern Newton, the remainder of Jefferson and Orange counties, and parts of extreme southwestern Calcasieu and western Cameron, that's over 30 inches. And then you can see in purple, that's 20 to 30 inches of rain across Tyler County, the majority of northern Jasper, northern Newton County, and then it extends into western sections of Beauregard, Calcasieu, Cameron parishes, as well as a little bit into eastern sections of Cameron Parish as well. The values, fortunately, are less further east you go, about 4 inches in Alexandria and 6.5 inches down in Lafayette. Here's our forecast rainfall between now and 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, basically showing the bullseye of rain being along and to the left of the path of the storm. So you can see for our forecast area of East Texas and Central Louisiana, we're looking at 1 to 3 inches of rain, with less than an inch of rain forecasted down on the I-10 corridor from Beaumont to Lake Charles and Lafayette. So the good news is that much of the area that's in dire straits due to the flooding, we're expecting minimal rain amounts down there. However, that rainfall up there to the north, what we're concerned with that bullseye is how that's going to affect the Sabine River and the Toledo Bend Reservoir elevation levels. And we're going to talk about that here in the next few minutes. This is the graphic that shows the river forecast across the area. The pink or purple pitch circles on here indicate major flooding, and then the red indicates moderate flooding. Orange is minor flooding. And so we're looking at record flooding occurring right now in Pine Island Bayou at Sour Lake and Devil Oaks, Village Creek at Coons, and the Neches River at Beaumont, with major flooding at several other areas down the Sabine River from Bon Weir, Deweyville, and Orange, Bayou Anacoco at Rose Pine, Bundy Creek at Bundick Lake, the Calcasieu River at Old Town Bay, Saltwater Barrier, and San Houston Jones State Park. So we'll start over along the Neches River area. The top left picture shows the water levels on Village Creek near Kuntz, indicated by the blue line. The latest reading was about 34 feet earlier this afternoon. The crest should be closing in on 36 feet later on tonight. So that's the timing of the crest for Village Creek near Kuntz. This is looking like about 3 feet above the flood of record for Kuntz. The bottom left picture is Pine Island Bayou at Sour Lake. We're near the crest right now. The 39.4 is what we're forecasting for the crest, and we're at 39.42 right now. The record there was 37 feet. So we're looking at that scenario basically being about a 2 foot above the record flood for that particular site. On the top right, the Neches River at Saltwater Barrier, we're still forecasting that to get up to about 13.6 feet. That causes significant flooding, widespread flooding, very deep flooding in northwestern sections of Orange County, the Lakeview areas specifically. And the bottom right is the Neches River at Beaumont. The latest reading actually was over 15 feet, and we're forecasting it now to get up to 17.7 feet as early as tomorrow and continuing near that level through the weekend. The next slide is the Sabine River scenario. So we just got a new update from the Sabine River Authority. They have 11 gates open at 2 feet, and that pushes 36,390 CFS through the gates up there right now, between the generator and the gates. The reservoir level itself is still slowly rising. Last reading was 172.94. And with it raining right now up there, I would expect to see those numbers to continue to go up. So what we're looking at here for these forecast points is what we're expecting with what we're currently seeing coming out of Toledo Bend. If they have to open more gates, the values on these graphics will likely have to be raised. So just be aware of that. We'll be providing an update later on tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on when we get an update from the Sabine River Authority. So right now we keep Sabine River at Burkeville below flood stage. Sabine River at Bon Weir is going to be cresting near 36.6 feet in the next day or so and holding near that level for the remainder of the weekend, which is about 8 feet lower than the March flood of last year. Deweyville is now expected to crest around 29 feet. That's about 5 feet less than the March flood. And the Sabine River Orange is expected to be cresting around 6 feet, kind of a flat crest this weekend, and that's about 1 foot less than what we saw in the March flood of last year. So for reference purposes, that's what we're looking at currently across the Sabine River. We'll be providing updates, like I said, later on tonight if we get new information from the Sabine River Authority. Over in Louisiana, these are the forecast points that we picked here for Bayou Anacoco at Rose Pine in the top left. Forecasted to go up to 25.5 feet. That's a foot higher than the flood earlier this year from April. The bottom left is Bundick Creek at Bundick Lake. It has already reached the crest of a little over 100. It's going to stay steady there for the next several days. For reference purposes, that's near the April 2017 flood. The top right is the Calcasieu River at Old Town Bay. We're forecasting that to get up to 10.5 feet. That's about a foot less than what we saw during Hurricane Ike. And the bottom right is the Calcasieu River at San Houston Jones State Park. We're forecasting it to get right at major flood stage of 10 feet, which would indicate major flooding down South Perkins Ferry and the Moss Bluff area. The tornado potential for the remainder of tonight looks like this. We're carrying a small marginal 5% risk in central Louisiana. You can see by the other shades of yellow and orange that the threat for tornadoes is really more to the north and east of our region. So the good news is we're expecting minimal threats from tornadoes tonight. Now the storm surge threats looking better in a lot of ways. The first one here, this is a graph that shows the tide readings for Sabine Pass at the top and Calcasieu Pass at the bottom. The red line is the observed, the blue is the astronomical forecasted tide. So you can see that we're approaching a low tide right now this evening. So we're not expecting any scenarios with storm surge associated with Jefferson County or Cameron Parish due to the fact that the tides are dropping significantly in those areas. However, there's still a lot of standing water because of the combination of the storm surge and rainfall in both southern Jefferson County and Cameron Parish, and that water will take a while to get out of the area. Now, further to the east, freshwater canal locks in the top picture and Moretta Pass in the bottom picture, they're both still running above normal, and with the southerly flow still pushing into those areas, there's the potential for 1 to 2 feet of storm surge water above ground level through the next high tide that will be late tonight. You can see the high tide tonight indicated by that blue line will be sometime around the midnight time frame from when potentially it could go back up there. But that's the scenario that we're looking at. So this is a lower value that we're expecting for the high tide tonight compared to the value that we saw earlier this morning, where the freshwater canal gauge got over 5 feet, mean low water, and the Emerald Pass gauge got up to about 4.5 feet. Finally, the wind threat, we're looking at gusty winds in the 25 to 35 mile an hour range this evening. You can see based on the graphic that we're really kind of focusing on central Louisiana and south central Louisiana, as well as coastal areas of southeast Texas, southwest Louisiana. That's where the strongest winds will be located tonight in the evening hours. After midnight, the picture on the right, we're expecting the remaining lingering winds to be dying down, with the threat being in the southeastern quadrant of where Harvey will be located. So parts of central Louisiana and perhaps south central Louisiana will be the focus where we'll see the 20 to 25 mile an hour winds. However, that does also include the coastal areas of Cameron Parish as well. Just be aware that when you're near the coast, a lot of times with the tropical systems, the wind can stay gusty for an extended period of time. And of course, with the winds being this strong, there is still the risk for a few trees to be blown down due to the wet grounds that we have across the area. Okay, so here's some news that's a little bit disconcerting, but it's worth mentioning to everyone at this stage of the game. There's a potential tropical system that could develop in the Bay of Campeche next week, in fact, as early as this weekend. So that hatched area there on the graphic, that's south of Brownsville, down towards the Bay of Campeche, that's the area that the Hurricane Center is monitoring for possible tropical development later this weekend into early next week. They're giving it a low chance of developing at 20%. So this is not a high probability event yet, but it's something that bears watching as we get closer to the weekend into next week. So if the system develops, it has the potential to bring more rain next week, not this weekend, but later on next week into Texas and or Louisiana. But at this stage of the game, they say it's too early to speculate on specific rain totals this far in advance. So this will be something we'll be monitoring very closely over the next several days, obviously providing daily updates on this tropical scenario to see what happens with this system. Finally, the system that's further out in the Atlantic off the coast of Africa, Tropical Storm Irma, it's expected to become a hurricane, but it's going to stay out in the Atlantic, and so it's not going to be a threat to our region over the next week. So in summary, Harvey is slowly weakening as it moves up into central Louisiana tonight, heading towards northeast Louisiana by tomorrow morning. The major problem in our region is still the ongoing flooding in southeast Texas and east Texas, as well as potential flooding for parts of central Louisiana. The winds will be gusty tonight in the 25 to 35 mile range in central and south central Louisiana in the evening, and 20 to 30 miles an hour in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. After midnight, the winds will drop down some more to the 20 to 25 mile range in Louisiana and less than 20 miles an hour in southeast Texas. But be aware that you have to watch out for fallen trees in these windy conditions. The storm surge threat has decreased in southeast Texas and Cameron Parish, but due to the standing floodwaters in the area, it will take days, if not weeks, to drain completely out of the region. The storm surge threat is low, but it's still a threat in Vermilion, Iberia, and St. Mary parishes, so water levels can be above 1 to 2 feet above ground level during high tide later on tonight due to the strong onshore flow of winds. Rainfall perspective, we're saying 1 to 3 inches of rain is possible in parts of East Texas and central Louisiana tonight, and the amounts will be much less down along the I-10 corridor. We're talking less than an inch of rain, significantly less than an inch of rain across the I-10 corridor from Beaumont to Lake Charles over to Lafayette. Record river flooding, we've mentioned all these points earlier, and the very small threat for tornadoes tonight will be in central Louisiana. So this is going to be my last briefing in terms of a conference call and whatnot on Harvey. Thursdays, we do our typical weekly conference calls at 2:30 in the afternoon. So that's the next conference call and slideshow briefing that we'll be doing for you guys. In the meantime, we will be doing email updates tonight as well as tomorrow morning when we get updates on the rivers. But in terms of Harvey, this is our last briefing for this particular scenario. So I'm going to unmute all the phone lines.
The leader has
see if anyone has
unmuted
any
your
questions
line.
for us.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Andy Patrick.
I need to call up a little graphic first. You talk at Deweyville, Bickley?
Just
All right.
give me an idea. We didn't talk about that.
Okay. Let me call it up here. It might take a little while. Meantime, when I'm calling it up. Meantime, while I'm calling it up, we're monitoring monitoring the tropics again. Roger showed you the area down around the Bay of Campeche, and I'll make a few comments on that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Make a few comments on that. We don't know exactly where, to the extent of development this system's going to take. We are pretty confident, though, as Roger mentioned, that we're going to probably be seeing some increasing rain chances, particularly, we think, Monday or Tuesday. But for the weekend, it looks like we're going to be seeing our normal scattered to widely scattered shower and thunderstorm pattern. So we're not really looking for any widespread flooding or anything like that. Unless it, of course, a local amount drops right over a flooded area. We're not really all that concerned right now. So it looks like for the weekend, for any sort of activities going on as far as any efforts on the what we're undergoing here, I think the weather looks pretty ideal for now. Later on in the week, we'll just have to monitor. As far as Irma's concerned, it's probably going to be at least a week or so before it maybe gets a little west of the Windward Islands. So then, right about then is where we're probably going to have a little bit better handle. So we're talking maybe a week, 10 days to 14 days to where we could even be seeing any sort of impacts. And we still have a long ways to go. The models have been spreading all over the place with this system. So as far as the Sabine River, we're probably have to continue monitoring. I wouldn't be surprised if they raise the level of the Sabine. I believe Roger said it was 3 to 4 feet below that. It might have to tick that up a little bit based on potentially more releases again. So that's
11 flood days,
I know, yes. So we're going to have to probably monitor that later in the week, sir. Are there any questions?
Hey, Andy. I have a question for you over here. Dietrich Taylor with Energy. Since Toledo Bend opened the floodgates, does anyone know what the impact will be for Starks with flooding?
Potentially, we think, at least given the current forecast, there may be some impacts to Highway 12 right now. But other than that, we need to probably look at this a little bit further. Based on our metrics we had with previous forecasts, obviously Deweyville and points around there is going to flood pretty significantly. But otherwise, as far as there's a potential for it to somehow affect Highway 12. Now, it doesn't look like it's going to be quite as bad right now as obviously the March 2016 floods, but at this time, a lot of it's dependent upon water releases out of Toledo Bend. Not right now, no, sir. We'll be doing that probably be looking at that here once we get Harvey out of the way tonight. I'll talk with our service hydrologist and we can get something a little more definitive on any sort of inundation type thing happening.
Andy, I've got a question. From we're talking about around 3 feet less than last time. The footprint, if I remember the topography out around there, is not going to be that much different from the flood of last year. Is that fair to say?
Generally, I would say yes. So
That's without the gate, sir.
That's right.
right, yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
Hey, I have one last question. I know it's early, but do we have any idea of when the ship channel will be open back up?
Coast Guard?
I don't see anyone from the Coast Guard.
So it's something that we're going to have to coordinate with our port partners, the pilots, and see when it's safe to really get that operating. But we're trying to get it operating as soon as possible.
I think Commander Koss said the other day one of the limiting factors was whether the pilots could get on the ship offshore. Is that still the case? Okay. So we have to get the offshore waves down before they can do that, right? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, and as Roger mentioned, along the coast and the nearshore, offshore waters, winds, even though the tides have gone down quite a bit along the coast, the westerly winds have kicked in, and they're actually been fairly strong, and the waves were running about 8 feet offshore, so we need to probably get that down. We're thinking that it's going to be a slow diminishing of the wind and waves through tonight and into tomorrow. Perhaps late in the day it'll be a little more ideal from a weather perspective. So that's kind of where that stands.
Hey, Andy, back here in the back, do you know how much rainfall has actually hit Toledo Bend? Do we have a total on that?
I can give you an estimate, but as far as an exact amount,
Yeah, just estimate's fine.
I'm going to say probably around 15, 20 inches. I can probably look that up
Okay.
a little bit, and so that's, unlike the March 2016 event, a lot of the rain fell in the upper part of the basin during that time, so it was more of a slower type of process in getting the water into the basin and down. So this is going to be a lot faster.
Okay. How long of a delay do we think before we see the impact of these releases? Is it 2 days, 3 days? Do we know?
Based on the forecast, I believe it's going to be about later in the week, so Friday, Saturday, so about 2 to 3 day time frame.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are there any areas in specific that should be concerned around these areas where the releases are going to be? Could you name them specifically?
Well, obviously, west of the Starks area is going to be pretty. So west of Maryville area, we'll have to monitor those. Those two communities in particular on the Louisiana side are probably the ones where we're going to have to really keep an eye on.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. No more questions for Andy? Sheriff would like to say a couple of things. Sheriff Mancuso.
I think we'll probably somewhat get back to some normalcy tomorrow, hopefully. For some, for others, they're going to be cleaning up the ones that have been flooded over the last several days and have lost a lot. For some in the Starks area and the Vinton, the westerly side of Vinton, west of 109, they may have some more issues and problems in the next coming days. That's why I asked the question I asked a while ago, because they're telling us without opening the floodgates in Toledo Bend, it appears that we're going to have about 3 feet less flooding in that area without the gates open. So we've already started today going door to door in those areas to warn the people that they need to start making preparations now and paying close attention to our news briefs. And I don't know that we'll have news briefings, but we'll be letting information out. We don't want them to get stuck. We don't know how long this is going to take because the river's swollen already just from rainfalls. In other words, we were going to have flooding regardless, and now this is just going to add to it. So, you know, unfortunately, there's just nothing we can do about it except prepare for it, and that's what we're doing at this time. So we're going to, we've already, I think I told you at the earlier briefing, we've already staged our manpower, our high water vehicles, and our assets in that area to deal with it, and we're going to be there to deal with it. So even though we're going to get back to some normalcy, we're still going to have issues to deal with here in the parish. And any rainfall we have may still deal with some localized flooding in our cities. So one other thing I think they wanted me to mention, I know the mayor of Lake Charles wanted to mention, and our police jury president is, we live in Louisiana. We have great people, the best in the world. We have a lot of volunteers. We had to open up some shelters for our neighbors in Texas. They absolutely took a beating, and they're in a bind over there. And we had no choice but to open up here and let them come to our community. And we're going to do that. And that's because we're in Louisiana and we love the people and our neighbors, and we're going to help them. There's a lot of people here that want to volunteer. And you know what? We want you to. Please don't get offended if they turn you away. They're going to take your name. They're going to take your number. They're going to sign you up. And this is not going to be a short-lived ordeal for the next, few days or a week or however long it takes. So we are going to need you. We just don't need you all at one time. So don't get offended. We want you. We need you. And just sign up. Our officials at both the Burton Coliseum and the Lake Charles Civic Center will have a mechanism for you to sign up. And you know what? School starts tomorrow. Some of our volunteers we may be losing. We're going to need you. We're going to call you. But let's do it in an orderly and an efficient fashion. If everybody comes at one time and everybody wants to help, that's the great thing about where we live in this community. Everybody wants to help. But we can't all do it at one time. There's a mechanism and an orderly way we need to do that. So our city officials and our parish officials, they know what they're doing. This is where they're experts at. Let them do that and don't get offended by it. We'll have security, Lake Charles Police, Marshal's offices at the Civic Center. We're going to be at the Burton Coliseum. We're going to be there to help them with anything they need security-wise and to make them feel safe. And there's no doubt in my mind that the citizens of Calcasieu Parish are going to do everything to make them comfortable while they're here. So we thank you for your prayers and thoughts all this week for us, for law enforcement, for our municipalities. And with that, I think Kevin wants to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, so. Definitely, just to echo a little bit of what Tony said, by all means, we have some great people here in Southwest Louisiana, and your help will be needed, and we just want you to go through it in an orderly fashion to where we can make sure we can get all the help that we need here in Southwest Louisiana. But we have a special guest here with us today, and I'd like for him to come up and share a few words with us. Is Congressman Clay Higgins. Would you come up and just share a few words with us, Congressman?
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been active across South Louisiana. Our district represents 9 complete parishes and a portion of a 10th, and the organization and the love and respect that's been universally observed is quite uplifting. The shifting of the storm a little bit to the west has certainly impacted our friends and neighbors in Texas, and we're responding. We've opened shelters, as the sheriff has indicated. That is a challenge. However, we're responding to it, I believe, in a way that we always have in Louisiana. The impact has been severe in some of the communities in Texas. The stories that we're hearing are not good. So the influx of folks coming into Louisiana that need shelter is going to continue. Busing is a challenge. We have civilian volunteers out there retrieving people as we speak. Sometimes it's hard to coordinate all the entities that are endeavoring to rescue folks and provide shelter, but we're managing to get it done. I would say just by coming together and communicating well. I'm just quite impressed by what we have participated in and observed, and I'm humbled to have been a small part of it. We're not going to stop. My office has been on what we refer to as our emergency protocol since last Wednesday. It means we're available 24/7. All the first responders here know that. We have our numbers, and we're sharing data. So the immediate challenge of providing shelter as the sun sets and we organize these the facilities here in the area for folks coming from Texas is what we really have to meet. And then the rebuilding, begins as the storm passes, and we'll see just how bad things are. But on a federal level, we will certainly provide the resources necessary for recovery. Every one of my colleagues, the Louisiana delegation, every congressional member has reached out to us personally and officially and offered assistance and help. So we'll be of one voice when it comes to the needed resources for recovery to make it through this thing. Thank you very much for being who you are.
Thank you, Congressman. I think Mr. Grimmer-Young had a few closing words. Is there any mayors here today that would have any comments? Chris, Hardy, Ponche? Okay.
Like Roger said, this was going to be for Hurricane Harvey. This is where our last live broadcast. But for everybody out there, we will be posting the slides on our Calcasieu Parish Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness Facebook page. Every time we get slides from National Weather Service, those slides will be posted. So if you want to be able to flip through those and see what we're seeing, those will be available to you when we get them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I know I speak for our entire legislative delegation, and I know I speak for our community. I just want to say publicly thank you to everyone in this room. I know Dick and the sheriff had to step out. I'm not going to tell the governor what a great job that Dick has done because he'll want to hire him away from us. So, but seriously, we've always been a strong community, and we've proved it once again this week. To all the law enforcement people, thank you. You've kept our community extremely safe, our mayors, all of our volunteers, everybody. Sheriff Mancuso and your staff done an incredible job once again. But to everyone in this room, thank you very much on behalf of our community for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And that concludes our briefing on today. I think the next briefing we'll have will be tomorrow at 2:30.